On this episode of Progressive Palaver, the group discusses Genesis by the Numbers. Hi and welcome to Progressive Palaver, a group of lifelong friends and appreciators of music discussing the greatest progressive rock bands album by album. On this bonus episode of Progressive Palaver, Joe Boclair is joined by his very good friends Ken Gregory and Paul Zotter as he examines the entirety of the Genesis catalog and delivers his analysis of Genesis by the Numbers.
Okay, so Genesis by the Numbers. This was hatched July of 2019 as we were actually working on the Genesis catalog. And it was an attempt by me to search for certain trends in the Genesis catalog. So if we scroll to the next slide, I will introduce how I sort of went about this.
This mathematical interpretation of the Genesis catalog was performed using only the full studio albums covered by the Palaver.
And again, I based this only on the studio albums that we talked about. It doesn't cover live albums, the studio tracks from 3 Sides Live, EPs and B-sides. None of that were included. So what we actually had then were 15 albums, 152 separate tracks, 13 hours and 31 minutes of music. Whew. A lot of it is very quantitative in terms of, personnel, but there were certain criteria that were put in here that were evaluated subjectively by me, such as prog, pop, whimsy, and Hobbit Sh.
Nice.
And the instrumental calculations were based on broad assignments. So again, when we talk about, if Tony played 12 string on some track on Nursery Crime, I didn't count that per se. So we're talking, just the main portion of this.
Got it. Incidentally, 3 Sides Live. It's 3 sides of a live concert, 1 side of other material. Is that the album that Paper Late showed up on?
Yes.
Were there any other notable tracks on that I would know? I
don't recall. I want to say there was.
It seems like that's sort of just disappeared. It's like erased from existence, 3 Sides Live.
Well, and it doesn't make any sense when, and I forget which way it was because it's been so long since we did it, but either in North America or Europe, 3 Sides Live was actually 4 Sides Live.
Fascinating.
Right.
I guess in good old USA, we needed a hit. We needed a single.
Me and Virgil. Remember talking about that one?
Yeah.
Evidence of Autumn and Open Door.
Okay, moving on.
Ooh.
Pie charts.
Dude, this is epic. You have to go back and do this for all the other bands we've done.
Jesus Christ. I don't know that I do.
Am I reading this for the benefit of the friends of the Palaver? Album percentage is one pie chart. Song number is another pie chart. And time is another pie chart. Oh, wow. So time broken down by lead vocalists is amazing because half of the time is Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins is not quite a quarter of the time. Wow.
Exactly. So you start to look at it this way and, you start to see different things, right? Because we were always, what really drove this from me was I really wanted to answer the question of how much of Genesis was prog and how much was pop. And because it seemed like, if you went off of sheer numbers sold, the pop version overwhelms. But even when you talk about those more poppy albums, there were always a prog number or 2 that was in there. And that's really what drove me down this little rabbit hole. As part of that, you had to sort of understand who did what. So as Ken points out, Peter Gabriel has over half of the full running time of vocals. Now, a lot of that has to do with dense albums, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and the fact that by the time Phil took over vocals, he started having a solo career, and Genesis were putting out albums much less frequently. But if you look at the song number,
Yeah.
you can see it flips around, which is interesting. Take that for what it's worth. And of course,
but if you're dealing with long proggy songs where they range from 6 to 19 minutes, then it would make sense that Peter's not on necessarily that many songs. Phil is on a shit ton of 4-minute songs.
Exactly.
Okay, so that breaks down the lead vocalist, and then we go through keyboards is very straightforward.
Pie charts of only Tony Banks in every pie.
It, for completeness sake, it had to be presented. There was Tony is the constant, right? There was never anything else. So guitars is interesting. It turns out Mike Rutherford ends up having about half of everything. No matter how you slice it, Mike Rutherford is actually responsible for the guitars then on half, whether you're looking at number of albums, number of songs, or running time. And the ratios don't really change that much. Anthony Phillips is anywhere from 10.5% to 13%, and Steve Hackett is right around 40%. So,
wow.
Joe,
So Steve Hackett's only on 6 albums.
Yeah,
but they're great albums.
And they are. Joe, this is where you said, like, you're not counting situations where Tony Banks was playing acoustic 12 string on something. All right. Okay.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Fair
so
enough.
Mike Rutherford, basically, whether you break it down by how many albums they did or how many songs they did or how much time was spent, Mike Rutherford is still doing 50% of all guitars in Genesis. Steve Hackett is doing slightly more than a third, and Anthony Phillips has this leftover wedge in there.
Correct. Bass, another exciting example. So Mike Rutherford is 100% of the bass, and he's roughly 50% of the guitars.
Yes.
So Mike Rutherford is doing a lot of work in Genesis.
For sure.
Yep.
Drums is interesting. Actually, you've got a lot more people in drums simply because you had 2 different drummers on the first 2 albums, and you had 2 different drummers on the last album. So you get a little bit more going on here. But clearly, I mean, Phil Collins is the identity of Genesis drums, if you will.
Right.
Now we get into the fun things. So one of the things that really a secondary aspect of this was when I was listening to other podcasts about Genesis, and I started listening to Genesis myself, the concept of song fades comes up an awful lot. You wanted to ask yourself, how often does Genesis, in fact, fade out songs rather than end them?
This is amazing.
Which is weird because obviously, they in certain examples they would fade them out live, but I mean, when they would play them live, they would actually make an ending. But on the album, you can see they actually fade out, in terms of number of songs, about 58% of the time. Every Genesis album has at least one song with a fade on it. Obviously, we haven't done this for other bands, but 58% of fade out songs seems pretty high to me.
It's pretty high.
I agree.
It's pretty high.
Especially one with such prog cred as Genesis.
So is Supper's Ready a fade out?
Yes. I believe it is.
It's a very appropriate fade out.
But it's still a fade out.
It's still a fade out.
Was any of this information for this particular slide available prior, or did you have to literally go through and look
I
at
listened to all 152 songs and determined whether they faded out or not.
Dude, the whole entire internet owes you a debt of gratitude because now people will know. They won't have to do it themselves.
This is amazing. Now we need a website.
A couple of these facts need to be updated on like the Genesis Wikipedia page for sure.
Oh, yeah. This is great.
This is awesome.
Explain this first pie for me. So songs with fade.
So when you talk about, on an album, you have, 6 to, 25 tracks, does any one of those tracks have a fade out?
Oh, if the album has at least one fade out, then
Yes.
that means that album is a fade album.
Correct.
Oh,
So it has
all
songs
albums are
with a fade out.
albums. Okay.
Every
Okay.
album has at least one.
Okay. So the actual breakdown for the benefit of friends of the Palaver, Genesis songs with fade, 88. Genesis songs with no fade, 64. So the fade wins substantially. And then in terms of time, there's 7 hours and 50 minutes of Genesis programming that will ultimately get you to a fade, and only 5 hours and 40 minutes of Genesis programming that will get you to an actual organized, orchestrated ending.
If you ask me what percentage of Genesis songs do you think fade out, I don't think I would come anywhere near 58%. Nowhere near.
It's quite stunning.
This would be fun for like guests that we interview, like, hey, Dave Kersner, there are 88 songs of Genesis that fade out, name 5.
He needs to be here right now. Oh my.
Now, the next slides are the subjective part, and quite frankly, as I was putting the last couple of slides, these slides here are the ones that I just finished up over the weekend. And as I was looking at the numbers, I was taken aback by some of the ones we're going to get to. And I'm going to assume that I did my homework properly. And so I'm going to stand by it, but it did seem a little surprising when I reviewed it. So these are the subjective categories that are now coming up. So one of the things that we talked about in the Genesis segment was whimsy. And, whenever Genesis whimsy popped up, it usually pissed me off. And so I went back and I tried to find those songs with significant amounts of whimsy.
So you were pissed off for almost 2 hours.
But it's actually it's a smaller amount of percentage wise than I would have thought. So again, if you're talking about song numbers, your 17 songs have whimsy and 135 don't. So that's about 11% to 89%.
Is a giant hogweed whimsy?
I believe that did count as whimsy. There's actually a very involved spreadsheet that goes along with all of this. So
I'm sure there.
Yeah, I was going to say there should be an appendix slide that accompanies all of the songs listed, categorized, whether they were whimsy or not. My initial reaction would have also been to think, wow, that's not very many whimsical songs. When we would go through this, like we would be in the midst of talking about like this really awesome Genesis album, and then Joe, you would kind of go, and that brings us to the Genesis whimsy. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of ever present, but it's really in small bits.
If you can read through the whimsy list, I would just be tickled pink.
Okay, so the giant hogweed does in fact get credited with whimsy.
Good call.
So the whimsy songs, those would be The Return of the Giant Hogweed, Harold the Barrel, Supper's Ready, The Battle of Epping Forest, Counting Out Time, Robbery, Assault, and Battery, A Trick of the Tail, What Gorilla, All in a Mouse's Night, Scenes from a Night's Dream, Dodo Lurker, Illegal Alien, Invisible Touch, Anything She Does, Jesus He Knows Me, I Can't Dance, and Alien Afternoon.
Only 17 songs. Oh my God, which Genesis albums have no whimsy? 3 Genesis albums have no whimsy.
Let's see if we can figure it out.
And then there were 3. That's pretty emotional.
No, you are incorrect, sir.
I don't think Duke doesn't have any whimsy, does it?
I'm thinking from Genesis to Revelation doesn't have blatant whimsy.
You are correct, sir.
Okay. And actually, I don't see any blatant whimsy on Trespass.
You are also correct.
Okay. So we're only looking for one more album without whimsy.
Which albums? The first. What did you say, Ken?
The first 2, from Genesis to Revelation and Trespass,
first 2
have no whimsy.
And Duke has whimsy in it?
No, I'm sorry, Paul. You are correct. Duke is the other one.
There it is.
There we go.
There's 3.
David Henschel. He cut the whimsy.
He sucked the whimsy right out of them.
So now we get into the prog portion of it. Now, again, keep in mind, when you listen to a Genesis album, even a late stage Genesis album, such as Invisible Touch, there are songs like Domino on there that have what I considered to be prog elements.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
This might be the most contentious appendix slide, though, right here.
It is very subjective. Absolutely. It's my own smell test. So what I came up with then is 14 albums that have some sort of element of progressive music on there, and one album that does not.
The first one.
That is correct. When you split it out by song number or time, it's pretty close to 50-50 in terms of prog elements. All this is saying is whether or not a song has prog elements in it. It doesn't talk about the songs that don't have prog elements, whether they're a pop song or something else entirely. This is just coming at it strictly from the prog side. So in terms of songs, 75 have prog elements, 77 do not. So that's a 49.3 to 50.7 split.
That's
pretty
impressive.
much right down the middle.
I demand a recount.
It's close enough we probably could get one. But when in time, it's a little, and this makes sense, the prog songs actually are a little bit longer. So you have 7 hours and 24 minutes to 6 hours and 7 minutes, which is about 55 to 45%.
Wow. Okay.
Huh.
That sort of tracks. That makes a certain amount of sense, right?
Yeah. Just to recap for Friends of the Palaver, Genesis has 77 not prog songs, essentially pop songs, and only 75 prog songs. So the pop is winning in terms of song number.
It's not necessarily pop. They're just not prog.
We'll investigate that in the next slide, Ken.
So in this particular list, where did like a song like Guide Vocal fall?
Guide Vocal did, in fact, get credited as being prog.
I'm down with that.
In fact, the entire opening suite of Duke was credited as being prog.
Okay, fair enough. And then
I just imagine Tony Banks as the John McEnroe of this. Like this was prog. This was on the line.
there's one song that I'm curious about, Joe, and it's from We Can't Dance, and for some reason I just can't think of the name of the song.
Fading Lights?
No, that should have showed up on the prog spectrum. Yeah.
Living Forever.
Yes, that one.
Living Forever was also not credited as being prog.
Okay, so then the other tricky one is, what about Abacab?
Abacab. Let's see what we had in Abacab. Dodo Lurker, Who Done It, and that was it.
As prog?
Yes.
Okay. I'll buy that.
Okay.
I like it. Listen, that could be an entire episode. That could be like a whole month's worth of episodes right there. Trying to decipher what songs by Genesis are prog and not prog.
So the next slide is what's really shocking.
Whoa, you actually used the word pop.
I did. Much like the previous slide, I looked at a song and I said, is this a pop song? Not, is it something else? Is it in the middle? Is it a true pop song?
Were there any quantifiable measures that included that? Did it have to chart or anything like that for it to be a pop song?
No.
Okay.
It was just, did I determine it was a pop song?
Okay.
I determined actually a relatively very small number of pop songs, 27 out of the 152, which is about 18%. In terms of running time, it's just a shade under 2 hours, which is about 15% of the total catalog.
When we were growing up, Abacab got a lot of radio play. That's nearly 7 minutes in its full form. Did you count that as a pop song?
I did not count it as a pop song because I did not consider it so.
Okay.
Wow. What about Man on the Corner?
Man on the Corner is indeed a pop song.
Yes.
What about Mama?
I'm sure Mama was not.
No. Yeah, that also got a lot of FM radio play.
That's not a pop song, right?
There's a difference.
Top 40 play. Say
there's a difference between being popular and being a pop song. Sussudio is a pop song.
If it's good enough for Casey Kasem, right?
If it's something you want to hear them perform live, I would say it's not a pop song. How about Follow You, Follow Me, Joe? Did that make it into the pop category?
Definitely.
I'm sure it probably did, but let's take a look. So, for instance, Mama is credited as a prog song.
There you go.
Okay.
How about Deep in the Motherlode? Where did that come in at?
Follow You, Follow Me is a pop song.
Okay, fair.
Deep in the Motherlode was credited as being neither prog nor pop.
Fascinating.
That's why I laid out sort of the subjective nature of this up front, because if you guys were to do this, you would probably assign different numbers, and we could make that an exercise. If you guys want to go through this spreadsheet and assign your numbers, we can then compare.
And then we could put together a list of songs, and we could put it in a playlist called Lost in the Valley Between Pop and Prog.
Oh, boy.
We'll kick it off with Deep in the Motherlode, and who knows what else might be in there.
Is that where the stealth prog lives?
The concert that I watched, I think it was like Christmas Eve that I watched it on YouTube. That was from like the Duke tour. Well, at least the video opened with Deep in the Motherlode, and that was freaking awesome.
Wow. I got to see that concert. For the Friends of the Palaver, we've got 5 albums without any pop songs. That's really interesting. And Joe, like you said, this category is the most subjective. So, folks could wrangle their own numbers.
Sure.
But this is a pretty good approximation. And anyone who's listened to an episode can pretty much size up your tastes, and I think you're pretty fair. So there are in fact 10 Genesis albums with pop songs. If you want to break that down by the actual number of songs, there are really only 27 pop songs in the Genesis catalog, and they add up to 2 hours of time. Whereas all the crazy stuff that people put on their glow lights and take chemicals or whatever they do, that's 11 hours and 33 minutes. A lot of complaining in the ranks of Genesis fans over a measly 27 songs and 2 hours of playing time for pop.
But I imagine this could be compounded, because I can think of at least one example where a pop song is also probably a whimsy song.
And what would that be, Paul?
I'm thinking Illegal Alien. That one has the triple threat of also being culturally inappropriate.
And in fact, Illegal Alien is counted as both whimsy and pop.
Nice.
So there you go.
Nice.
That ends up being, Ken, I think to your last point, I think that ends up being exponential in the mind of the Genesis fan.
Yes. The ultimate question that you answered was how prog is Genesis.
Correct.
Let's talk about the Hobbit shit, Joe.
So this was the one, as I was putting it together, I'm like, really? This seems incredibly low. The ongoing joke has, sort of developed in the Palaver about, in order to be a prog song or band, you have to have Hobbit shit in it. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to me that the impression, as I thought back on it, was that Genesis had a habit of going into really esoteric, mythical type things. I had Hobbit shit values all the way down at Calling All Stations, which suggests to me that I actually went through the entire catalog with this category.
Joe, this is why you have to do all the other bands, because I mean, not to just know the prog to pop ratio, but the prog to pop to Hobbit shit ratio across bands. That's important stuff.
You think it's critical to our understanding of progressive rock?
It absolutely. We need to understand who is the king of Hobbit shit in prog rock.
This is where we hang our hats. We're going to be the data guys of prog.
It's all about analytics,
Nate Silver is not going to know what hit him. We're just going to be right there.
I seriously can't believe it took you this long to put something like this together. This is epic.
Wow. Only 3.9% of Genesis songs have Hobbit shit.
And that seems really low, doesn't it? But
if you asked me what band has the least amount of Hobbit shit, I would probably say Genesis.
I mean, Rush is probably
and the
pretty
expectation,
high.
The expectation would be that Rush probably has the most Hobbit shit, right?
That would be my guess.
With Marillion, we talked about.
Yeah, Grendel, I think, is the only one that you might have Hobbit shit, maybe.
And that's not even on a
for
full
the
album.
name of the band.
Yeah.
Joe, will you entertain us with the 6 Hobbit shit songs from Genesis?
Of course I will, Ken. The 6 Hobbit shit songs are The Fountain of Samasis, The Lamia, A Trick of the Tail, Scenes from a Night's Dream, Cul-de-sac, and Alien Afternoon.
Huh. I think the Venn diagram with whimsy is overlapping.
Actually, only half of these 6 are credited as having whimsy.
Yeah, okay.
But 4 of them have fades.
Wow. See, this is...
I think we need the Genesis board game where you have to drink the number of times you land on a song, and if it's got a fade, you drink, and if it's got Hobbit Sh you drink, and it's going to be quite a game.
We definitely do need an interactive spreadsheet for this, Joe, so people can just pull up a song and filter out. I want to listen to all of the Genesis songs that have Hobbit Sh, whimsy, and are prog.
So
and have Peter Gabriel singing.
The Hobbit stuff is fictional.
Correct.
And it helps.
Fantasy fiction.
Okay.
This is how I sometimes spend my time.
I think your assignment for 2021, Joe, is to do this for another band.
Pink Floyd's going to be exhaustive.
The problem I have with doing Rush is there are 3 albums I can't even listen to. So,
well, maybe we can help you.
Okay.
Well, there you have it. I mean, that is Genesis by the numbers. Well done. Well done, Joe. What was for you probably the most surprising thing you found?
The most surprising thing I found, I think, would have to be the relatively small percentages of true pop songs.
Mm-hmm.
If you just casually think about it, you have this, at least I have this perception of late model Genesis as being almost all pop, and that's when they sold their souls to the gods of money, and Phil corrupted everyone, and I mean all the stories. Again, as we were going through that segment and we're talking about things like Fading Lights and Domino and Mama and Silver Rainbow, things like that, those are not pop songs. I mean, Mama is about as not pop a song as you can get.
Agreed.
Even though it was very popular on the radio, it in its construct, it's not even close to a pop song. I let the numbers speak for themselves, and what I found was, according to my evaluation, Genesis did not do that much pop. Now, I would imagine if I did the Phil Collins catalog, I would find a lot more true pop songs, as I consider them.
Yeah. So there were definitely pop songs on the Genesis album, the Mama album. I think a lot of the notoriety of that album was from AOR radio at the time. But that's really when they really just started to explode. Maybe there was some bleed over in the fact that people maybe ascribed a little bit more poppiness to some of this stuff, some of the older things from like Duke and Abacab and the Mama album because of what came after that, maybe?
Think about Duke. What does the casual person on the street of our age know about Duke?
I guess misunderstanding and Turn It On Again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all they know. That helps color this. I mean, even as far back as, and then there were 3, Follow You, Follow Me. That's what people know.
Right.
And so you can sort of create this perception of an album being, or a group being, much more pop than they are, even though the rest of the album is nothing like that. Think about all the people who bought Porno Graffiti looking for an album full of more than words, and were like, what the fuck is this?
That's a great fucking album.
Porno Graffiti?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. Coming next, Rush by the Numbers.
Rush by the numbers. So I'm glad that you guys appreciated the effort. Once I got into it, I couldn't stop because I'm just that stubborn.
That's great.
But I couldn't decide if it was just stupid or interesting. But we weren't here to talk about Genesis by the numbers.
But we did anyway.
We did anyway.
That
Sort of
was
on the fly, completely impromptu. I love it.
We hope you've enjoyed this bonus episode of Progressive Palaver. As always, we've enjoyed sharing the conversation with you. We look forward to your thoughts, comments, feedback, and questions. You can reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We are at Prog Pala on all of those, or search for Progressive Palaver. You're welcome to email us. Our email address is progpala, that's PROGPALA @gmail.com. Progressive Palaver is available presumably wherever you find your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, and even Pandora. We are, as always, hosted on SoundCloud. So until next time, thanks for listening.